You can use any 24 peg loom. It can be a round loom, it can be any 24 peg loom. You can set it up for 24 pegs. You can use a round loom, you can use long loom, it doesn't matter. This is what this is written for, just a 24 peg loom. And it doesn't matter your gauge, any gauge will work. Okay, so I always like to start off with the head. Okay, and the head says flat 24 pegs. So you're going to be casting on, you're going to do a drawstring cast on for 24 pegs. And you're going to do it flat. And what's going to work up the same with the cat and the dog. And the rabbit, and I'll show how to do the squirrel, and they all generally work up the same. Okay, so what you're going to do is your first thing you're going to start out with, no matter if you're making the dog, cat, or rabbit, or even the squirrel, you're going to start off with a drawstring cast on, 24 pegs flat, and you're going to knit 9 rows. Alright, so let's start off with that. Now, because I'm doing a little different thing here, by doing 4 at once, I want to make sure it's going to be easier for me, so I'm going to be doing this as my first peg. Alright, so it keeps me even. Alright, so what I like to do is stick my finger in front of that first peg. This will be my first peg. Whatever your first peg's going to be, you're going to stick your finger on the working yarn and pull it back. Alright, then you're going to weave. So this is going to be your next peg. And then that's going to be your next. Okay. Alright. Now, what you're going to do is, instead of going circularly like you might have done before in other projects, you're going to take it back the other direction. Okay, so you're going to slip your way back, try to push down all your loops. Okay, and you're just going to toss over every other loop you just created with your weave. Alright. I apologize for the distraction. I have no time to film anymore, so bear with me. Here, okay. So we're about done with our drawstring cast on flat. Okay, now when you get around here, if you're working on a flat zone like this, make sure you nail that one, and you want to be able to go in and toss this over like this. Okay, so don't forget those zones. Alright, that's drawstring cast on flat. And you're going to slip your first stitch and knit your last stitch. Now that's not written in, you don't have to, it just makes where you knit your last stitch, slip your first stitch, just makes it easier to see a chain to sew up. Okay, you don't have to, you can just do it straight out. Alright, so I'm going to slip that first stitch and I'm going to knit my way around. Okay. Okay, and then we are to our last stitch in this row. We knit it, and then we'll slip it, or we skip it and just head on over. Alright, you do the same thing going around the other direction, and you're going to do this for a total of 9 rows, okay? So I just completed row 1, and this is going to be row 2. Just go ahead and pause the video and complete 9 rows knitting back and forth flat. Alright, so pause the video, complete that, and also keep in mind, if you want to do a little bigger of an animal but you want to keep the tightness going on, you want to E-wrap a row and then flat knit a row, and what that'll do is it'll still keep you a tight stitch while also allowing for a little larger of an animal than just a straight out knit. Okay, so that should help you in if you want to make a little larger of an animal but you want a tight knit so that you can stuff it firmer. I like to stuff my animals firmly, so that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. You can wrap a row, knit a row, and you just need to keep up with what you're doing. If you need to write it out, what row you're on, and whether you're knitting or e-wrapping, but you can do that and that helps. Alright, so there's my last stitch. Toss it over. Slip the first stitch and go around. So that's rows, 2 rows. Get a total of 9 rows going, and then when we come back we'll be ready to do ear rows, and that's where the videos will break up. Okay? Yeah. Okay, we're going to do the ear for the cat now, and my suggestion is to use stitch markers on the area where it's going to have BOLB, which means bring original loop back, bulb. Alright, so you're going to see knit 5. Alright, so you're going to calculate out 5 with no stitch markers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it says knit 6. So you're going to add stitch markers to those 6 stitches because they're going to be, you're going to be bringing the original loop back, which you'll see at the end of this parentheses section. And the parentheses section means it's a short row section where you're working over these 6 rows through this whole section, and a comma represents a new row, okay, unless it states knit 6 for 4 rows, okay, and this is the shorthand method. Alright, and then it says after you finish the ear section that you're going to knit 2, you're going to have 2 empty pegs here with no stitch markers. Then on the next 6 you're going to have another set of 6 stitch markers, and then you'll have 5 with no stitch markers, okay? And that's going to be the easiest way to do the BOLB without having to work at it too much, okay? Alright, so what you're seeing is you're going to go ahead and you're going to knit 5, and I've been slipping on that first peg. When I originally did this book, it did not have this, so if you want to go ahead and knit the 5, you can. If you want to slip, it'll be slip 1, knit 4, right? But either way, it will work. You're just working over the 5 pegs. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's many ways of doing something, okay? Now, you'll see your parentheses section that says start ear, and it says knit 6 for 4 rows. So, what you can do on this, you can just pull those stitch markers over, and this counts as row 1, okay? Okay, and push those in. Alright, so that counts as row 1. Alright, and so this is going to be row 2. Row 4. Alright, now it says you're going to knit 5, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that means. Okay, so starting with the peg you finished with, make sure, starting with the peg you finished with, you're going to knit over 5. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it says knit 4. So you're going to knit back 4 starting with the peg you finished with. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it says to knit 3, starting with the peg you finished with. So here's 1, 2, and 3. And it says to knit 2, starting with the peg you finished with. 1, 2. Then you start going back up again. So starting with the peg you finished with, you're going to knit 3. 1, 2, 3. Then it says to knit 4. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then it says knit 5. And go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. Then it says to knit 6 for 4 rows. So here's row 1. 1, 4, your last one. Then it'll say B-O-L-B, bring your original loops back, which we're going to do. Okay, so there's 4. Okay, now what you want to do now is bring your original loops back, because it says B-O-L-B. So you bring all those back. This is the fastest way to do it. You'll never get a faster way to do it than do it this way. Makes it real easy. And generally this saves you from having to sew up your ear. Okay? I'm just letting you know that. What you're doing is saving yourself some sewing. Alright. So then you can take the stitch markers out. Okay. Next. It says to knit 2, 1, 2, and then it says ear. And what you're going to do is you're going to go right back to the parentheses section, and you're going to do exactly what we just did in the next 6 pegs, okay? And that's what that ear means. You're going to go right back up here, and you're going to do that ear again in these next 6 pegs. And then what you'll do is knit 5, so you'll finish the row after you do the ear, okay? And what you should see here, it might be a little more difficult, is you should see a little appendage with a little point on it. Right, there's your ear. Nice little ear. Alright, so finish completing your ear row, which is row 10, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do row 11. Okay? Okay, this next row, row 11, is going to qualify for the cat, the dog, and the rabbit, but not the elephant. Okay. So what you're going to do is, because it's just varied in the different spots, what this means here on row 11, knit 5, knit 2 together 6 times, knit 2, knit 2 together 6 times, knit 5. Okay, you have your cat here, but basically what you're doing is getting all your pegs back down to 1 stitch. Okay, so it's going to vary differently between the animals, just a little bit between, say, your rabbit and other things. It's going to vary just slightly, but all you're doing is getting your pegs back down to 1 stitch. Okay, so that's going to be the same for the rabbit and the cat and the dog. Now it's going to vary a little bit. Okay, for like the rabbit, it's going to be a knit 6, then knit 2 together, I think 5 times, and then knit 2. Okay, but what all you're doing is getting your rows back down to, getting your pegs back down to 1 stitch is all you're doing. So you're just going to go in and you're going to knit your way around and knit 2 together if there's 2 stitches. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and complete this row, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what the next section is. Okay, so in the book it has row 12 through 16 to knit, alright, and what that is 5 rows, because between the getting your pegs back to 1 stitch and then knitting for 5 rows is 6 rows, which is typically what happens after you do the ear section on the majority of the animals in this book is 6 rows. If it changes, I usually put it in there, make sure you notice that and count it out. You know, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you'll see that's 5 plus 11 is 6. So typically it's 6 rows after the ear. Alright, and that is what it's going to be after the elephant. So you're going to do 6 rows, okay, but on these you're going to do 5 rows, okay. So what that means is you're going to go back and forth for 5 rows. So this is going to be row 1, and if you're not having to get all your pegs back to 1 stitch, then you're going to do a total of 6 rows, okay, and this is what typically comes after the ear. Alright, so if you're doing the elephant, you're going to just do 6 rows, and with the dog, rabbit, and cat, you're going to do a total of 5 rows because you had to work all your pegs back down to 1 stitch, okay. So what you'll want to do is go ahead and pause the video and do your 5 or 6 rows back and forth depending on what the pattern says, and then we'll be ready to do what I call an internal decrease, and it's where you're just going to half the number of stitches you have, and it's going to go from 24 pegs to 12 pegs, and I'm going to show you how to do that. There's a couple of ways you can do it, but the way I prefer best I will show you, but that's the next hardest part of this pattern besides the ear section, is usually the internal decrease, because this is where you can accidentally drop a stitch, but I'll show you a way of doing that so that it's a little easier for you. Alright, and then we're going to have so many rows of knit after you do the internal decrease. Now the internal decrease is generally going to work for all of the rabbit and the cat, and the dog may vary a little bit, but I'll film that one separately, okay. So there's the internal decrease, which I'll show you how to do that, and then there's the actual length of the snout area, okay, and that's what makes that defined area is the internal decrease. So on if I'm doing something out of this book and you come up on this video, you're still on the right video, okay, because what this is it's I'm going to show you 2 ways to do the internal decrease from 24 to 12 pegs, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that, okay. So what you can do is you can take your end stitch and you can take it over, and then you can wrap it, then you can take the next one over and you can knit, and you can take the next one over and knit, okay, and the next one over, and knit, and the next one over, and knit, and one more, next one over to there, and knit. Now you can do this all the way around, okay, and then when you're done, what you want to do is you want to pick up each of those stitches, alright, and because you did it like this, those stitches are kind of loose, so they should be really easy to move, and you're just going to place them right beside each other, okay. Now you'll notice the stitches are loose. You will need to snug them up, as I call it, Alright, what that means is you go in and you're going to pull that next stitch and pull the next stitch until it's snug, and pull the next stitch and pull the next stitch, and you just do this all the way around. Now that is one way of doing this, and you're just going to do it all the way around to the end here, okay? And you just gather it together. Alright, that is one way of doing it. You just have to stitches. The other way of doing it, and it does risk you losing the stitch more, but if you're comfortable with it, you want to lift up 11 stitches on one side, starting from the end. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then what you want to do is place 2 stitches on, if you have another hook, this might make it a little easier too. And I find doing this on the larger gauges is a little easier when you start doing the internal decrease. Okay. What you want to do is you want to set up 2 on each, 2 stitches on each peg over 6 pegs, like that. See? Now you can do it that method, and then what you don't have to tighten the stitches, then you can just knit it over. Okay. Now when you do the first method, you have to do it all the way around. You can't do the halfway point and then do the other half. You have to do it all the way around, okay? I just showed you halfway around. But when you do the first method, you have to do it all the way around. When you do this method, you do half the first half, and then you do the second half. And set it up. And then all you should have to do is knit them together. But you don't have to tighten the stitches up, okay? So if you do this method, you don't have to tighten the stitches up, but if you do the other method, you do, okay? But at this point, you will have just decreased to your face area, and you can see your ears popping through and that kind of thing, okay? So that is how you do a internal decrease. You have 2 options. You can go around and decrease and knit 2 together all the way around, and then pick up the stitches and put them beside each other and then tighten up your stitches. That's method 1. The other method is to go in and lift all 11 stitches and then place 2 over 6 stitches here, and then lift up on this side and place 2 stitches like we just did here. You're just going to do it 1/2 and 1/2 like I just did. You could lift up all 24 stitches and then place 2 stitches on each peg. As I said, there's always one way to skin a cat. So basically what you're trying to do is go from 24 to 12 pegs, and if you find a better method for you, go for it, okay? But this is the internal decrease, and I use this a lot in the majority of this book, and so this video will be put in here anytime I run into showing you how to do another pattern. If it shows up doing an internal decrease, this will show up. So just so you know, you're still on the same video if it shows up, okay? It's kind of like the last video for the 6 rows, 5 or 6 rows after you do the ears, and the very beginning where you do the back of the head, okay? These are all areas that run the same. I'm just trying to be able to speed up my video process so that I can get you this book and a full pattern video collection so that it makes sense when you're going in and you have this, and then you can go in and make any of these. So I'm just trying to make the video work sped up, so any area it's the same, it's going to show up in each video where it's the same as what I'm just doing now, okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, after doing the internal decrease is your snout area. If it's a short snout like the cat and rabbit have, you're only going to do 4 rows, okay? So if I run into another pattern where it's a shorter snout where it's only 4 rows, this video is going to be used. Just be aware of that, okay? So for instance, on the cat video, on the cat pattern, it says row 18 through 21, 18, 19, 20, 21. You'll see that it's 4 rows, okay? And you're going to knit for those 4 rows. Alright, so what you're going to do now is you're just going to knit back and forth for 4 rows, alright, at this point. 12 pegs, 4 rows, alright? So go ahead and pause the video and knit 12 pegs for 4 rows, and then we'll be ready to do our drawstring bind off. And that's going to work the same for pretty much all of my stuffed animals that have a snout. It's going to be a drawstring bind off, right? And I'll show you how that's done. Okay, so pause the video, get your 4 rows done. If you're doing the dog, you'll need to do 8 rows. Okay, so if you're doing the dog, do 8 rows. And the cat and the rabbit are all 4 rows, okay? So, and it starts working differently on the elephant, and I'll show you how to do that, but go ahead and do 4 rows for, if the pattern says 4 rows, so make sure you count out. If it says 4 rows, do that. If it says 8 rows, do that. So basically what happens after your internal decrease is you're working the snout area, and it's going to be usually a flat knit area. If it's not, I'll film it, but if it's just a regular knit area for however many rows you want to do that, okay? So it's 4 rows for the cat, and it just so happens to be 8 rows for the dog, and 4 rows for the rabbit, okay? So go ahead and pause the video, get your snout knitted, and then we'll be ready to show you the drawstring bind off, okay? And finish up the head area of these, of my basic animal pattern. I use this head system a lot, alright, and mostly all that's different is the ears, and the internal decrease may not be a full decrease of 12 to 24, it may break up some, and then usually the snout is standard however many rows, okay? So keep that in mind, that when I'm showing usually a head of one of the animals in this book, I'm probably going to be coming back to the 9 rows, the 6 rows after, the internal decrease, and however many rows after that for the snout area with the drawstring bind off. That is typically what happens with my head area. More often than not, there's only usually a few rows. There's this row 10 is always different, and however many rows for your snout is usually different, and sometimes the internal decrease isn't quite a full half decrease, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing the heads of my animals. That's why I'm getting a general on this one, okay? So go ahead and do however many rows you need that's written in the pattern, and then we'll be ready to show you the drawstring bind off. Some areas will have a little bit different. The dog will have a purl row and then a knit row, okay? And I'll show that specifically for the dog, but in general, 4 for cat, rabbit, 8 for the dog. It'll say however many rows of knit, follow that, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to do a drawstring bind off for the head. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do a drawstring bind off for the snout, or the finishing of the head on pretty much majority of my animals. And what you want to do is you want to go in and actually I like to start on the opposite side of the loom for this. And what you want to do is you want to cut your strand, toss the bottom loop over on the opposite side, and pull through. Toss over and pull through. Toss over and pull through. And you're going to do this all the way around. Pull through. And we're almost done. And you do this with any of them that finishes off the snout this way. Just draw a string through. If it's different, I'll show it. But if it's like this, then this is the video you're going to get. Okay? Alright. Then you simply pull the head out. Okay? And you tighten that up. Now, what you should have here is your head. Okay? And your little snout area. And you can go ahead and pull the back of the head. Gather that up. Okay? And there you should see your little cat face. But that is generally what you're going to do, is drawstring off. Then I'll show the other section of what typically happens after I drawstring off. Okay, so go ahead and drawstring your snout off, and then we'll be ready to start the next section on completing your heads. Okay, I'm going to show you how to start working on the body in general for some of my animals, like the cat and the dog and the rabbit, that kind of thing. But generally all my bodies start off with a drawstring cast on. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a half knot to take that down there. Okay, so again, when I'm doing the bodies in general, I like to start on the wedge pegs. And the reason being is a lot of times I don't end up using those pegs even with all the animals I do. And that's what you want to consider if you're doing something like this on the X-Limb, where you're wanting to do multiple ones at a time. But it doesn't really matter if you're using something else. Okay, so that's going to go in front and back, front and back. But this time we're going to be working circularly rather than flat. Okay, and again, all my bodies generally start with a drawstring cast on, and we are doing circularly. Okay, so you want to go in and you want to toss that over, and you want to go around this peg and toss that over, and toss that over. And so you just want to toss over all the ones you've just made. Now the next step is to either knit circularly for 20 rows or 6 rows. Okay, and that's generally how I get started. And so what I'm going to do is I'll show you this video, and then I will state how many rows you'll need to do after you do your drawstring on, cast on, okay? In which we've almost done it. And so one more, and that completes our drawstring cast on, okay? Alright, now, at this point, you want to do normal rows of knit, just nothing special, just go around and knit. And you have the option, when you're looking at the pattern books and everything, it'll usually tell you so many rows, and this is what those so many rows are, okay? So this is pretty self-explanatory. It's when you start getting into those bodies that actually are doing your legs along with the body that it gets a little bit more complicated, and I'll show how to do that because the elephant goes over that, okay? But at this point, for instance, if you're doing the cat or the dog or the rabbit, you'll want to do 20 rows, okay? So that is how you start doing your body. You're just going to go in and you're going to do a drawstring cast on, and then you're going to knit around like you normally would to make a hat or anything like that. You're going to knit around for a total of 20 rows for some, 6 rows for others. I believe the elephant's 4 rows, so you just need to figure out how many rows it says in the pattern and follow that, okay? And then it's going after that and doing the either the tail row or the legs, which is not as hard as it looks a lot of times in the written pattern. The legs aren't. And I'm going to show you a little technique that is not written in the pattern, but you can do it, or you can choose not to do it if you think it's too complicated. But I will show how to go about doing the legs and what it means and what that short row method means. But usually my animals have minimal sewing involved, because I find most people want to do stuffed animals. They don't want to have to do a whole lot of sewing. So that's mostly what you're going to get out of my patterns, is minimal sewing, okay? So go ahead and pause the video and get how many rows you need done according to the written pattern, and then we will go from there, and I will show you how to do the next steps. You're either going to be doing your tail row or you're going to be doing leg row, and I'll show how to do leg row because there's 2 types of bodies I generally do if I'm not doing any birds or fish. There's 2 types of bodies. There's the ones with the legs already done, and then there's ones where you attach the legs, okay? And so I'm going to show you how to do both those, but this is how every single one of them starts, okay? Okay, I have just completed my 20 rows, and at this point I am ready to, according to this, on my body, it says after your 20 rows you're going to purl a row, and then you'll knit for 6 rows after that, and then draw a string bind off. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Okay, excuse me. It's 5 rows after you purl the row. Okay. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. This is not as difficult like as other patterns. When you're adding a tail, you're doing another short row section. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You go in and you purl a row, and then you knit 6 rows. Okay. So that is the cat. So what you want to do is you want to go around and you want to purl a row. And the benefit of purling a row is you have an idea of where to sew your legs on, okay? So that's the benefit of being able to go in and purl a row, because it's going to give you a line to work with. Alright, so what you'll want to do is you'll want to pause the video, and I'm going to tell you to go ahead and work on completing your rows for the cat body. So you purl one row, and then you're going to knit for 5 rows after that. So you're just going to knit in the round 5 rows just like you've been doing for the upper part of the body. Alright, and then when we come back, I'll show you how to do the drawstring off so that it's really nice and smooth at the bottom, okay? And then we will go on to learn how to do the limbs for the cat. Okay, I'm going to show you how to finish the drawstring off so that it's nice and smooth like this. You can do a standard drawstring, but you'd probably have to do the star close like we did for the head. And so I'm going to kind of show you how to do this. You go ahead and cut you a nice long tail. And what I like to do is skip my first peg, toss the bottom lip over, and then pull the tail through. And I take off every other stitch. Alright. So what you want to do is you want to take off every other stitch first. Alright, then you'll skip when you get your way around to the other side. Okay. Okay, you're back around to the beginning, and what you're going to do, because you want to see where the extra long section is, you're going to skip that. That's going to be your last one. You go to the next one, then you're going to finish taking off all the stitches at this point. Okay. I'm going to show you how to go in and figure out which section you need to pull first. Okay. Let's go ahead and finish taking off all the rest. Alright. Pull that to the side now. I like to stretch it out. So, what you want to do is you see there's a finish here. See if I can get it to focus. Okay, you'll see there's the finish here, and then you want to go to this strand here on top. You want to pull it first. Okay. Which you'll see should pull the inside first. Then what you want to do is grab that and then pull it the rest of the way. Okay. And what that does is it gives you a nice, smooth, flat bottom. And then you just send it through and tie it off. So you send it through and just tie it off. Okay. And that's how you do the drawstring. Now, if you're doing the body anyway, now I know we've done a drawstring for the top, and the object of it is to just kind of get your seams where they're lined up, because most of your cast-ons are kind of loose when loom knitting, and what this does is you can drawstring it to the point where you can sew on the head easier. So you have this hole here, you can drawstring it to the point where you can sew on the head a little easier. Okay, so that is how you finish that, and the purpose of the drawstring is not to completely drawstring it, but to get it down to where you can match the bottom and that and sew it together. Okay, so that's how you do a drawstring off. Okay, the second option of limb is what I usually like to call front legs, or legs in general that has a foot to it. Alright, and how that's going to work is it says to drawstring cast on for 16 pegs. Alright, again, because it's flat, you don't have to worry about using the wedges. Okay. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Alright. Weaving it in and out. And then you're going to take it back around go ahead and make sure you have 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We have 16. Okay, now at this point it says to knit rows 1 through 4. Okay, so you just want to knit for 4 rows. And you will have to sew these up. So my suggestion to you is knit the last stitch, slip the first stitch, so that you have a nice clean chain to follow when sewing it up. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and complete your 4 rows, and I'll show you how to do the next section. Okay. So when you reach the end, now you don't have to do this, but if you want a nice clean chain to work from to sewing it up, then I would suggest this. Alright, so knit that last stitch, and then you're going to slip it and knit your way over. Okay, now I'll do this for 4 rows, and then we'll be ready to start row 5. Okay, you'll see here that you'll have decreases going on the end pegs. So decrease, and it has the right direction. So you're going to decrease in 1. You're going to knit the 2 together. Okay. And what you can do, actually, because you see a decrease on the other side, and then knit the 2 together, you can pick that up and go ahead and decrease it over so that you don't have to worry about it and accidentally forget it. Okay. So there's your decrease, and then here's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you want to knit 2 together. Okay. Whoops. That happens. Gently put the stitches back onto peg, and then if you need to, knit one over then the other. Okay, then it says to do it again to get yourself down to 12 pegs. So you're going to move that stitch over on this side, and I like to go ahead and go to my end peg and go ahead and decrease it so I don't have to worry about it again. Okay, then I'm going to make sure that I go ahead and knit those 2 together. 1, 9, 10, and knit the 2 together on here on the end. Then at this point it says to knit for rows 10 through 17. Okay, so basically you're going to knit for a total of, see, I believe that's 7 rows. Okay, so you're just going to knit back and forth, and that's where I start slipping the first stitch and knitting my way over, and you're going to do that through rows 10 through 17, and that is the front leg. Okay, so you want to go ahead and pause the video and get those number of rows done. Hold on, wrong section, thought it was longer. Excuse me. You do decrease twice. Here we are, right here, and then you're going to knit rows 7 through 18, which is usually about 10 rows. Okay, so you're going to knit for 10 rows, pardon, and you're going to knit back and forth for 10 rows, and then when we come back I'll show you how to bind off and sew up, and you're going to end up making 2 of those. And this is the front leg. This is this leg here, which is the same for the dog front leg and the bear's bottom legs, and this is also used for the fox pattern. This leg is used for the fox pattern here as well, and and it's also used for this dog pattern. And it's used for this rabbit pattern, and it's used for the scarecrow's legs. So as you can see, that's one of them that gets used. Alright, so that is the front leg, usually with a foot on it. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, get your 10 rows done, and I'll show you how to do a bind off. Okay, it's time to show you how to complete a front leg or a leg. Okay, and so we finished up, we've done our decreasing, that kind of thing, we finished up, and we've done our rows, and now we're ready to bind off. So what you want to do is knit that second stitch, bring that second stitch over to the first peg, okay, and toss the bottom loop over. Now this is pretty self-explanatory on a bind off, okay, and how you create a leg. Now on some patterns this leg may be longer, it may be shorter, it depends. Pay attention to how many rows you're looking at in the pattern, okay, because it can vary. Alright, I use this as a leg as well, like for the bear and the scarecrow I use it as a leg. I can use it as a leg for a doll because it has the foot area. So you want to make a doll with a nice foot area, you can use this leg, this limb option. And then wrap again and pull through. Okay, you've now completed knitting this style leg. Okay, so you're going to pull that out. Okay, and as I said, for the leg, when it comes to the drawstring, you're not actually drawstringing it all together. You're getting it to where all the stitches are nice and neatly lined up rather than stretched, okay? Alright, so like that. Okay, where they're nice and neatly lined up. Fold that in half, and then it's time to start sewing up the leg, okay? Now, because I like to conserve all the stuff that I have in here, I'm going to use this to sew up my leg. Alright. I like using the extensions I have. I think it makes it more solid. Alright. So whatever length you have longest. Alright. Now, I send that through, and then I follow the chains down. Sewing up the front, so you want to sew up the front, okay, then I reach here, and then what I like to do is do 2 half knots. Then I like to just shove that up in there, so that I can keep it. Always use your tails as stuffing. Makes it where you have to use less polyfill. Okay, just going to send that through, and then what you want to try to do is send this between the two notches all the way down the bottom, and what that'll do is keep it fairly even on your drawstring. So you'll see a notch and a notch. There's a notch between each of the, between the needles. See a notch and a notch? You're going to send it through there. Okay. It also helps to keep your stitches even again. And that's always a good goal to have, is to keep even stitch work. Okay. One more. Okay. There. And you've sewn up that leg. You're going to tie it off. Then you're going to send it through the leg, trying not to send that needle through anything else. Alright. Alright, and then you just pull it on through. Okay. There you go. Now, use that as stuffing. Okay. And if you start having a hard time with this, using it as stuffing, you can use some blunt scissors at the tip to go in and start sewing it in there. Okay. So at this point, then you'll be ready to stuff, but that is how you do a leg. Okay. Okay, so I want to show you how to go about doing a back leg, which is usually the look of an animal sitting. Okay, and there are several that have the back leg: the rabbit, the cat, the dog, the squirrel. So there's several that have this back leg style. Alright, now if you don't want to do the back leg, you can always do the body type 2, and that works just as well. Alright, so the body type 2 is like doing like the elephant without the tail, and that way you don't have to do all these extra appendages if you don't want to. So there's always 2 options if you'd like. Alright, so now to get us started, it says to draw string cast on 24 circular. So we will need the wedge for this one. Alright, so let's notch that down. Okay, so you want to hold that back. You want to do just like you did on the back of the head, except in the body, but this is going to be circular. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then all the way around, weaving back and forth. And remember, this is circular. Okay, once you get around here, then you're going to start tossing every other loop over. Okay. We have now worked our way around, and then at this point it says to go in and knit 6 rows. Okay, so what you want to do is go in and then just knit all the way around in circular for 6 rows. So go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll be ready to bind off 16 and then start actually working to where you're rounding it off. Okay, so basically you're working with foot area right now while working with all the stitches you've got, and then when you decrease, you're decreasing actually off the foot area, because you are going to need to be sewing this stuff up. Okay, So go ahead and pause the video, get your 6 rows done, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we're working this back leg. Alright, and you did 6 rows. So 1 through 6, you've done 6 rows. And then it says to bind off 8. You want 8 empty pegs, really. So I like to knit that first peg, knit the second peg, and take that second peg over to the first peg, toss the bottom loop over, and move it over one. Knit the second peg, take the second stitch back to the first peg, and toss the bottom loop over. You're going to do this over and over until you have a total of 8 empty pegs. Alright. And this should be my last one. We'll count it out and make sure. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See? 8. So you want 8. And then you're going to knit your way around, which says knit 16. But what you're doing is you're knitting your way around on that one. Okay? And what that means is you should have a total of 16 pegs left. And usually when you do the bind off, you have a shortage. Okay, so at this point you're going to start knitting flat rather than circular, which is why it says start working flat. Okay, and then you're going to go down to the next row. Now, at this point it says decrease, knit 2 together, knit 12, and decrease. So if you got decreasing on the ends, then you can go ahead and just kind of move them over. So there's a decrease. Take that stitch, move it over, and then you can come over here so that you don't forget and move that stitch over, and then you'll be ready to just knit your way around. Alright, so you're going to knit those 2 together and then knit your way around. And then knit those 2 stitches together. Then it says to do it again on both ends. So decrease, knit 2 together, knit 10, decrease, knit 2 together. So then you're going to take those end stitches and move them in one. Make it easy on yourself, so you don't have to worry about forgetting. Okay, then you're going to knit your way around. We're going to get to the last peg and knit the 2 stitches together like it says. Be decreased. Okay. Now at this point it says rows 10 through 17 to knit, which means you're going to do 8 rows. Okay. So basically you're just going to knit back and forth for 8 rows. And if you want it easy to see when you go to actually sew it up, knit the last stitch, slip the first stitch. Okay? So here's row 1. Alright, so I'm going to tell you to go ahead and pause the video and complete 8 rows. Alright. And then when we come back, we'll be ready to start our next section, which is row 18 and 19. Okay? Okay, over here it says on row 18 that you're going to decrease on ends and knit, and that you're going to do that twice. Okay, so again, I like to go ahead and just move my stitches so that I don't have to worry about it. And then knit. I'll wait it over. Knit the two together. And it says to decrease again. And then you're going to go in and knit the two together on that end, and then knit your way over. Knit the two together. Okay, at this point it actually says to bind off. Alright. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that first stitch, knit the second, take that second stitch back to the first peg, toss the bottom loop over. So this is nothing special, just a bind off. Okay, at this point, got your long strand, pull it through, pull it out. Okay, then you want to start stretching everything out. Alright, and it's the same thing like it has been being. You just want to pull this where all the seams are aligned with each other. Okay, just like, okay, and you can see that you have created an L, so to speak. See, an L. And basically at this point what you want to do is go ahead and sew this up. Alright, and that's the reason why I cut this kind of long, because I'm going to use it as my way of sewing it up. Okay. And the thing about when you sew up this back leg is it's going to be completely closed off. You're not going to be sewing it on later, and so you've got to remember that you need to stuff before you finish closing it off. Okay, now because we finished on an end and we kind of need to start back here, what I like to do is just kind of send the needle gently back to my starting point. Okay, now at this point we want to try to line everything up so that it's even, and then we're going to take our outer chains and start sewing up the leg. Okay. You want to sew all the way down. And pull that and pull it out. Okay, we're almost done with this now. I'm fixing to start work the area that you need to start keeping in mind, so I'm going to send that through. Okay, then I'm going to send this through the center point. Okay, and push down through. Okay, then I'm going to straighten that up. Now you're going to be sewing these in this end together, and when you get halfway back, stuff. Alright, this way you get it all in there. Okay, lots of fun with that. Okay, and when you get to the drawstring, if you would like, you can go ahead and you can tie that off. Okay, and then you can stuff it into the foot front, and you most likely want to do this because this is a really tight area to fit in stuffing. Okay, so you're going to want to definitely stuff this tail in, okay, to the front of this leg. And we'll make it easier too next time. Okay, so we're almost at our halfway point and sewing it up. And then we're going to need to stuff. Alright, yeah, one more. Okay. Actually, I'm going to hold back on that. Okay, now. That's about my halfway point. At this point, you want to stuff your leg. You'd be surprised at how much polyfill you need for stuff like this. Now, let's say you're just requested to make one animal for a person. If you have an old pillow you aren't using, use it. Okay? Don't go out and buy yourself a whole big bag of stuffing, not necessary. Alright. Okay, so stuff it the best you can. And then once you have that, then what you want to do is finish sewing it up. Okay, and I haven't stuffed it like massive or anything. So just finish sewing it up. Now if you run into an open spot like this, what you can do is you can send your needle up through there and you can just close that off. Alright. Make sure that when you do that, that you loosen that back up. Okay, and you can just close that off so that you don't have that opening. Okay. Alright, now, at this point, you have just finished your leg, okay? And that is how you make a back leg. Okay, when you're doing your cat, you obviously need a tail, okay? And you'll see that it says flat knit flat with 6 pegs. You want to drawstring cast on 6 pegs, and then you want to knit for 30 rows and bind off. So basically you're doing an I-cord is all you're doing. So wind on there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, and then you're just going to knit back and forth for 30 rows and then drawstring bind off. Okay, bind off. And what this is going to do is actually going to create a tail for you. If you have a spool, you can do 30 rows on a spool. If you don't, then you can do this method. Okay, so go ahead and it'll naturally curl in just like a tail, and you want to do 30 rows or however long of a tail you want, and then you're going to bind off. And we'll go from there on attaching the tail, okay, and finishing up this tail. So go ahead and pause the video and get your 30 rows done and be ready to bind off. And then we're almost done with the cat. Remember, it assembles, the body assembles the same way as the dog, as you can see. and you just need to add the tail, and the tail can be done last. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and get your tail done, and we will attach it. Okay, we finished our 30 rows and we're ready to bind off. So you're going to go ahead and knit, slip that first stitch, knit the second peg, take it back to the first peg, toss the bottom loop over, move it over. Knit the second peg, move that second stitch over to peg 1, toss the bottom loop over. And we'll bind that off all the way. And last one. An extra wrap. Cut you a little length to sew on and pull through. Then you just want to pull it out, and then you can drawstring that in. And there is your tail, and then you'll be ready to sew it on. Okay, to close off the back of the head of these animals, what you want to do is you want to draw a string, and then try to push that drawstring in there here. Okay. Now you'll notice that there's still a slight opening. We're going to fix that, okay? So, and I'm going to show you how to go in and fix that. Go ahead and get you a needle. Alright, now there's a star method that I like to use to truly close off the back of the head. Okay, and you're going to do this with all of them. So you're going to send the needle through the opposite side that you finished on. Alright. Then what you're going to do is you're going to hit the top. You're going to do it like a star. You're going to go in through the top here, send the needle through. Then you're going to come back down to the corner, but not quite, just a little above it. Then you're going to come back over here, just like drawing a star. Okay. Then you're going to go straight across and pick up a stitch there. Then you're going to go back down again on the other side, slightly above where you started. Then you're just going to pull all that together. Okay? And as you can see, it closes off the back of the head. Alright, once you have that tightened up, a lot of times you'll knit your way back a few, okay, just to kind of close off the bottom back of the head a little bit. Alright, so just send it through the chains as far out in the outer bit as you can. Alright. I'm only going to do that about 3 times because I need a big enough opening to be able to stuff the head. Alright, so once I got that, then I will knot it off. And I usually don't cut it because I usually just stuff it in to the head. Alright, just add stuffing. Alright. So that is how you go and do the star pattern to close off the back of the head. Okay. Now, all of them eventually you'll need to sew up a snout or a trunk. You take the drawstring, and usually I leave a lot extra to be able to do other things with, because I usually cinch the eye area or use it to sew up the ears, that kind of thing. Sometimes ears don't need to be sewn up. Okay, so you drawstring it together as tight as possible. Then you want to sew up the snout. And if you slipped and knitted the end stitches, you should have a chain, but you want to try to get as close to the edge as possible when sewing up your snout area, and that includes it on any of these animals in this book. Okay, you want to do that with. Alright, and then when you get over to your decrease, you're going to go one past the decrease, and that sews up your snout. Okay, so that closes up your snout. Now you're going to knot that off. Okay, and then certain ones you don't have to sew up the ears. As you can see, you don't have to sew up the ears for the cats. So sometimes the ears you don't need to sew up. You don't really need to sew up the ears for the dog. Right? So that is how you do the closure of the snout and the back of the head. Okay, when you are doing eyes, most of the time we're making these for children. You'll want to get safety eyes, is what they're called. And getting a multi-pack where you can get different sizes is really beneficial, okay? And you can get them all in different colors and that kind of thing. And you can get really standard black ones and that kind of thing. And you can get noses. Here's little noses so that you don't have to embroider noses if you don't want to. You can also get eyelids and that kind of thing that you can add on to your animal's eyes as well. Now, what I like to do is, if you're trying for something more realistic, you can put eyes where they normally are. For instance, this is the dog. I'll eventually tack down the ears when I've got the head stuffed. Okay, so I'm going to tack down the ears when I get it stuffed. Right. But what you want to do is, a lot of times you'll go in and you'll find the inner corner of the ear and go straight down to the base of the snout, and you can add that in, okay? And it lines up straight down rather than going down like that. Goes straight down from there, like a straight line. Okay, let's see if I can get a needle. Alright, so it's straight down like that. And if you think the eye is too small, you can try one that's a little larger, or you can go for one that is, say, brown. Okay, and going straight down, and at the base of the snout you'll see it in the decreasing area. Okay, so there's a brown. And then if you go down, straight down, and add an eye there. Okay, now the bigger the animal, the easier this is and that kind of thing. And then what you want to do is you want to look at it and see if it's about where you want it. If you think it's about where you want it and it's about even, then you'll go in and you'll add your backs to it. Okay, and your animals will look a little strange until you get your stuffing in. Okay, so you do your back to it. Alright, and you just shove it down in there as far as it'll go. Okay, and the tighter your knit, the more likely they are just stay solid. And you better be aware of how you put them in and have them exactly where you want them, because once you put these safety eyes in, I find that they do not come apart with any ease. Alright, so there's my eyes, and if you want to add a nose, you can add a nose, and I find adding a nose to the very top here is the best place for it. But if they're to the front of the face, you can do towards the front of the face, or you can do on the side. It depends on if you're going for just an animal that's friendly or something more realistic. Okay, so you just place that in there, the general area I think that's going to work at. Okay, and then when you think you've got it, I think it's a little off center. I think I may need to move it over to about here. So you find the area where it's going to work. Show it through. Take a look at it again. That looks about right. Okay, when that looks about right, I'm going to go in and close that off. Okay, and then at this point you stuff your head. Okay, and this is with any of them. Now then you'll do an eye cinching technique. Okay, but this is what you do to add your eyes and stuff. If you're doing a rabbit or the elephant or something where the eyes are generally on the side of the head rather than on the front, you can go in and find the base. You want to find the base of the snout, and you want to go just a little above center. Okay, so a little above center, and it also may be in the center of the ear, but you want to go at the base of the snout if you're going for the eyes to be on the side. Same thing, you'll generally want to follow the line down and add the eyes about there if you're doing your ears and stuff on the side, and you want to find where your first decrease is. Same thing on any of them. Okay, if they're on the side, you can figure out exactly where on the side. Usually what you want to do is you want to find your ear, the top of it, go straight out and put it at the base of the decrease area. So the eyes are going to go right there. Alright, so that's how you add eyes. And the next thing you want to do is stuff. And if you need to sew up your ears, you can sew up your ears. You smash them as flat as you can. I usually start on one side, sew up, sew down, weave in through the inside of the head, sew up, and then sew down, and then tie it off here. And that way you don't have to have too many cuts and additions in there. Okay, so that is how you generally close up the heads and add eyes on these animals. And then I'll show you the next technique, which is how to go about cinching the eyes so that you have a really defined area for your face, and it really makes the face pop. Okay, to cinch an eye area, I usually take either the snout or the back of the head, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it through the back center a lot of times. Alright, and if you like the look and you don't feel like you need to cinch it, like this looks more like a chihuahua, you don't have to. You send it back through, and then what I like to do is go at the base of the snout. Send it up as close to the eyeball as possible. Base of the snout, send the needle through, send it back through to the back center. So you send it up and through into the back center again. Pull through. And what you want to do at this point is kind of pull tight. And you can see where the eye is more cinched in, right? Okay, I'm going to show you how to assemble the cat and the dog body together. Alright, So actually what you want to do is, after everything's stuffed like it is, alright, what you want to do is you want to sew your limbs on first. Alright, and you want to find out what your center back is. Okay, which looks like it's that. Alright, and what you want to do is you want to sew the front legs where you fold them in half. You want to sew them right at the very top of the body like that. Okay, so you want to sew them on like that, and then you want, these are the tops of your legs. Okay, and as you can see, they all get kind of sewn together like that, and then you add the head on top. Alright, so what you want to do is you want to sew your legs on first, your front legs, and then sew your back legs on last. And then the last thing that gets sewn on is your head. Okay, and it's the same way if you're doing the cat. Alright, so this is the same process. So what I like to do is find out where my back center is. There's my back center, so here's my front center, and I'm going to sew straight across. Alright, so I'm going to find out where my center is, which is right there, and then work my way. Okay, the first thing I want to do is send it through the top of the body, then send it through the very edge of my leg. Alright, and then send it through my slip stitch. Okay, then you're gonna send it through part of leg, and then the body. Okay, and then the leg, front and back, and then connect to the body. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way across. You're connecting it to the body. Making sure you're staying even with it. And one more edge. Okay, then you know you've sewed on that first one. Now you want to sew on the next one, so it should be right beside it. Okay, the needle came out. Okay, so at this point you want to fold your leg in half. Okay, and then you want to start sewing the other half on now. Alright, so start on the end. Okay, and then sew it on. Okay, now your front legs are sewn on, and they should be approximately lining up. Okay, now if you don't like cutting and starting new ones again, you can take and just send this down and start sewing on the back leg. I can tell you the tricks on sewing back legs is you want to kind of line the bottom up with that purled line here. So, and it's more of almost a weaving action. So you're going to weave that in. So I typically start weaving in just so up. So I weave into the leg, and then I weave into the body. Okay, and then I weave into the leg, and then I weave into the body, and I weave into the leg. Now at this point you can do a little sewing up of the purled row with the leg. Okay, now you can leave it where the leg's loose, or you can try notching it in more. Okay, and you want to do that, you can just sew that down too. Alright, now let's say you want your legs to stay down, then you can go in and catch the tip of those feet. You don't have to do this. Catch the tip of those feet and bring it down. And you can do the same thing. And send it through a couple of purled rows and then send it up through there. And these will kind of keep it down. Okay. Then you want to find your other leg, which is right here. And remember, this is your top and this is your bottom. Okay, and keep that out of the way. That's going to sew up your head. Okay, so you have that here. And then what you want to do is take it through the purl a couple of times, then send it through a purl and send it through the bottom. Okay. Alright. Then you're going to send it through the purl, send it through the bottom. Working your way around. Okay, and then we're about ready to sew up the back of that leg. And we're going to do one more. Okay. Now at this point, this is where you're going to start the weaving process. You're going to weave it through the body. And you're going to weave it through the leg. Weave through the body. And weave through the leg. Weave through the body. And weave through the leg. And weave through the body. And weave through the very top of the leg. And you should practically be able to tie off your original slip knot here. Alright. Now, here's where I take that off and shove it in there. And then this is where you want to sew on the head. Now remember, this works exactly the same as the cat when you assemble it. And you're just going to sew the head on. Okay? So you keep the body strand that you have and you thread it, and then you're going to sew the head on. Remember that the nose is center between and the back is center for the tail. Okay? You're going to be starting on a slight angle. Make sure you get the very edges of the head as best you can, and then just work your way around. Okay? Basically, we'll make sure your ears line up with the sides of the legs, the back legs. Okay. And make sure the back lines up as well. Okay, and you can see how that's coming along. Okay, and if you didn't draw stringing enough, then you're just going to go in and send it through a couple, and then send it through the back center. This is usually where you see if you draw strung it enough or not. If you didn't, you can always fix it. Okay, and just send it through a couple of those notches, and then send it through the head. Okay, but you make sure your back center. Okay, and then you're just going to keep going around, and we're almost done. We've almost got our head sewn on. Okay, we do one more, and the head is basically sewn on, and then at this point you want to knot off, and then what I like to do is tuck that tail in to the middle. So thread my needle and then send it through the body. Okay, then you can just cut off the extra. Make sure not to cut your garment, your fabric. Alright, so there. You put together the dog and the cat the very same way. Okay. Here's your little tail. And that is how you assemble the body for the dog and the cat. Okay. And sewing it on is actually really easy. It's not difficult. Alright. And you'll want to tack that down, or you can weave it up the tail if you'd like. Okay, you can go in and weave it up, but you got to close off that end. In the meantime, you want to find your center back and focus on putting that down, and you're going to knit over. So you're going to find your center back, you're going to send that up through there, so you're going to send that up through there on the side one, then you're going to send that through the middle of your tail, so that you can attach it on this side. Okay. And now your tail is attached. Okay. And then you can go in and send that through. And I like to send it through once, pull through, and then send it up through the middle of the body, and then cut the excess off, and then pull. And so you have your tail. And to finish off, you can thread this in. Because it naturally curls in, you can just send it up through the bottom here. You do every other When you pull that. Okay. And there is your tail. Okay. So that's how you do the tail, and you assemble the body just like you normally would. And there is your cat.